Welcome to Love in Life, a guide to a positive mindset. My aim is to show you that the key to a happier and more positive mind is to love the life you have. We will look at tips and tools you can use to improve your mindset, and the best thing is, we'll all be on this journey together. Hi everybody, welcome to episode 35 of Love in Life. We are in the beginning of March, and here in the UK we are awaiting a little bit of a cold snap, a bit of a snowstorm, I believe. Whether this will come true or not, who knows, but if it does, this is actually quite unheard of for us at this time of year. So if you're listening from the UK, I hope you're keeping warm, although I guess wherever in the world you are listening, I hope you're keeping warm. Everybody deserves to be warm. It's our birthright. But yeah, if you are battling with snow at all this week, I mean, at the time of recording, there's no snow, but we have got a weather warning for snow. So good luck to those of you who are battling with snow, whether you're in the UK or not. Personally, I could do without it, to be honest. Like, I've been really looking forward to, as you know, because I've said it for the last few weeks, I've been looking forward to warmer days and blossoms in the garden, you know, my plants coming through. I've been looking forward to getting out in the garden more. But yeah, obviously being in the snow does kind of stop that, stops you planting anything. And also, I really don't like being cold. I fucking hate being cold, in fact. And I was hoping that by now I would have been able to stop putting the heating on, but no, it's still on. It's still cold. But speaking of gardening is something that I really want to embrace a little bit more this year, because I have had, in all the many readings I've had over the years, I've been told to embrace my creativity, and I figure that being out in the garden is one of the ways to embrace my creativity. And my garden needs so much work doing on it. I've got the perfect opportunity to explore my creativity out there. So it's got me thinking about creativity. Like, quite often when we are told to be more creative, or, you know, we're asked if we're creative, many of us often think we're not creative. We often assign creativity with being artistic. So, you know, whether you can paint or draw or being able to write novels, we normally associate creativity with that kind of thing. Which, don't get me wrong, that is a very obvious form of creativity. But most people think you have to be good at it. Like, what is good? Define good. Most people think that we have to be good at it to be creative, in order to be creative and explore our creative side, which is what I want to discuss with you today. But first of all, I just want to consider with you, what is the point in being creative? Like, if you don't think you're good at drawing, good at painting, if you think, well, I'm not creative because I'm not good at those things, what is the point in trying to convince yourself to be more creative? So, you know, I'm all about the positive mindset. And along with positive mindset, goes mental health. So creativity, being creative, has been proven to improve your mental health. And it does this in the following ways. So creativity can increase positive emotions. It can lessen depressive symptoms and also reduce stress and anxiety. And all of these things occur when you have a release of dopamine. So what does creativity have to do with that? Well, the thoughts that are released by taking part in a creative activity can be similar to meditation because of the calming effects it has on the brain and the body. And this itself releases dopamine. Oh, it's just started snowing. Dopamine is also released when being in a flow. So, when you're doing something and you end up losing all track of time, like time has got away with you before you know it. And that's because you've been focusing on one thing and you've really got into the flow of doing it. And being in a flow itself reduces anxiety and it boosts your mood. It can even slow your heart rate. And that's because you are focusing on one thing and you are getting wrapped up in all your thoughts are going into this one thing. And before you know it, you've got an end result. And when you succeed at producing an end result, your brain then releases even more dopamine. So that's how creativity helps improve your mental health. It also helps you have more of a spiritual connection. So if you are on a journey of self-discovery, or if you are on a more spiritual journey, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, whether you're religious or you believe in a divine power, a higher power, whatever you want to put it, or even if you're not necessarily on a spiritual journey and you don't believe in any form of higher power, embracing your creativity can help with self-discovery. And the reason why it does this is because being creative, taking part in creative activities, helps you fulfill your potential as a human being. Like, there are certain factors that help us be humans, feel human beings, like feel the emotions that make us different to animals and robots, And creativity is one of those things that we are blessed with as human beings. So we have to embrace it. It also helps you let go of the ego. So first of all, what is the ego? The ego is the part of our conscience. The ego is the part of our conscious that we think we are. So it's the labels we give ourselves. It's the things that we think we need to be. And we start to assign qualities that we think we are, that we think we're not. And quite often, these are completely inaccurate because it's our ego telling us what we think we should be. So by taking part in creative activities and, being in the flow, like we discussed, being in a flow helps you focus and it helps you kind of work outside of the conscious. It helps you see your truer self. It helps you let go of your ego. That's my interpretation of it anyway. And letting go of your ego helps you identify with who you actually are. So all comes back round to self-development and embracing spirituality, embracing creativity is all part of self-development. It is all part of letting go of the ego. It's learning about who we actually are and what we actually think is important in life. And in one of my readings, the lady actually said to me to embrace spirituality and psychic abilities through creation. So there we go. So are you one of those people who is now thinking, what if I'm not creative? Or are you telling yourself, I'm not creative? Well, I want to tell you that simply is not true. So creativity means to generate new ideas, to do things a new way. And there are different ways of being creative. There are two main different ways of being creative. The first way is to create a new way of doing something that's already done. It already exists. And you do this by building on what we already know. And then the second way of being creative is to generate fresh ideas. And it's having the ability to break new ground. And I guess this is what many of us think creativity actually means, is to do something completely new that's never been done before. And whilst, yes, that is an amazing trait and ability to have, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you don't do that, you're not creative, or that you can't develop that ability. Because for most of us, for what we need in our lives, for most of us, the first example is enough to feed our creativity in terms of mental health, spiritual connection. So that is finding a new way of doing something that's already done. For most of us, that's all we need. That's enough for us to embrace creativity. So that can be things like taking a recipe and changing a few ingredients, and you're creating something that's essentially new because you've changed ingredients, but it's not groundbreaking. You haven't invented the recipe. Another example of that is finding a different route to your destination. So if you are traveling to, I don't know, Scotland, there's not just one way to get there. There might be the most obvious way to get there, but there are many different ways that you can get there, and some might take longer, some might be quicker, some might be more expensive, but creating different ways of getting to your destination is another way of using your creative mind. And so most of us are naturally creative. Most of us are able to think in this creative way. We just don't believe we're creative because we're not good at art. We don't tell ourselves we're good at art. We tell ourselves we're not good at something. Our ego speaks to us. But we are all naturally creative because we have that ability to think in that way. So then looking at the second way that I said about being creative, generating fresh ideas and creating groundbreaking ideas, this is more sort of what you would associate with like inventors. So a more innovative way of thinking. And again, this is something that we tell ourselves we don't have the ability to do. But I just want to say, being creative or thinking in this creative way it's not like a generational thing. It's not passed down. This is something we can learn. This is something that with practice, we can become better at. We can improve it. Obviously, there are going to be other people, certain people that are better than it than others, naturally, just like with everything. But this is something that can be learned through behaviours. So what do you think it takes to practice this form of creativity and improve your innovative creativity, shall we say? So, in my opinion, it takes the desire, like you need to want to think in this sort of creative way. You need to want to have the imagination, and having imagination quite often means being very open-minded to trying different things and not closing anything off, not believing that a particular thing isn't possible. So you have to have the desire. And then if you've got the desire to think in this innovative, creative way, then you need the mindset to be able to see problems as opportunities. And again, this is something that people tell themselves they don't have, but we all have the ability to do this. We just don't all have the desire, and that's completely different. You need the mindset to just keep going when things get tough. And you also need to be able to form habits, because obviously if you're trying to think in a new way and be more creative, think in a more creative way and learn a new creative hobby or craft, then you need to be able to form habits, because this requires a lot of, self-teaching. It requires a lot of practice. It requires a lot of time. So all these things are going to easily not stick if you don't form some habits. And obviously I think it was only last week I talked about forming habits. There are lots of different things we can do to help us along the way. So what are some ways that we can be creative? So apart from the obvious ones that I've already mentioned, like painting, drawing, writing, you can also journal, which obviously journaling it's just being aware of your thoughts. It's allowing your thoughts to flow and writing them down. And then you build in on one thought after another, which then leads to something that you didn't even realise you were thinking. Speaking, obviously we all have conversations. If you're able to hold a conversation, then you have a creative ability. You're not always copying what somebody else has said. You are coming up with your own conversation, your own thoughts and ideas. That is being creative. Decorating, gardening, baking. And again, there are going to be people who are more naturally talented and gifted at these things. But that's not to say that we can't all be good, or we can't all improve on these things. We can do colouring in. Like there are plenty. Oh God, I used to love sitting down with the kids when they used to have their colouring books when they were little. I remember flicking through one time and like loads of it was mine, where I would sit with one of them and they would do one page and I would do another. And loads of it ended up being mine because I just love colouring. It's very basic, I know, but I just love colouring. But obviously you can buy adult colouring in books nowadays, which are actually, again, goes back to mental health, but a lot of mindfulness practitioners advise people to have colouring books because, again, it allows you to get in the flow. You don't really need to think when you're colouring in. You don't need to think too much, it allows you to get in the flow. Knitting or sewing, obviously all these things are creating something with an end result. And it's just, these things we can either do in the first way that I described of being creative. So taking something that you already know and just flipping something to make it your own version of something you already know, or you can completely flip it on its head and create a brand new way of creating something that's never been created before. And you can do those with all these things. Playing music is another way of being creative. And I will say something from doing my research for this episode, something I've come across which I find really interesting is that people who play music have an even better connection because they use both the left side and the right side of their brain at the same time. So let's say you're playing the piano. The left side of the brain, the logical side of the brain, focuses on the motor functions it takes to physically play the piano, whereas your right side of your brain, your creative side of your brain, focuses on the melody, the sound that you're producing. And when these two sides communicate with each other, your cognitive function improves. So it actually means you're using more of your brain. It actually makes you smarter. I just find that amazing. Alfie has started learning the piano recently and he loves it. And it's one of those things, like, I quite often think, I wish I played an instrument. But like I've just been saying, just because I've never played an instrument before doesn't mean I can't ever play an instrument. Like, you're never too old to do something like that, are you? Creativity helps us perceive the world in new and different ways. And so whether you're doing a creative project in which you get into the flow and you sort of go into a meditative state where you lose all track of time, or whether you are in a different way of thinking, a more creative and innovative way of thinking, you're perceiving the world in new and different ways. You're opening your mind to new and different things. And by being creative, we learn to express ourselves in different ways. And self-expression can help us connect or reconnect, I guess, with our identity. It helps with self-actualization, which is, not to get too deep and meaningful, but is probably the meaning. At one point in our lives, we'll probably all get to the stage where self-actualization is the meaning of life. Like, what is the point in living our life if we don't know who we really are? That is getting really deep now, isn't it? But creativity is amazing for this. Normally, I'm very good at trying to organise myself and trying to say, right, on this day, I'll do this. I'm very flexible with that at the moment, I must admit. However, when my baking business closed and I obviously entered a new routine, I did initially set aside time to be creative. And that was off the back of one of the readings that I had. And obviously she said about, embracing my spiritual and psychic abilities through creativity. And I set aside, I agreed with myself that I was going to set aside Thursdays, or at least Thursday afternoons, to be more creative, to take part in creative activities. And I haven't really done this, to be honest, even though I'm kind of punishing myself because I love being creative. I love decorating. I love baking, even though I've kind of gone off of it a little bit after baking so much for my cake business. But, I'm getting back into it a little bit now, like being in the kitchen for pleasure. I love painting. I did A-level art at school. I did foundation art. And I've kind of picked it back up again when we went through lockdown, but then when life got busy again, I let that go. So that is something that I want to take part in more. So yeah, I guess I'm telling you that because by saying it out loud, I've done this many times where I tell you things and then because I've told you, I have to stick to it. So I guess what I'm trying to achieve is by telling you that every Thursday, or at least Thursday afternoons, I'm going to make sure that I do something creative. So I'd love to know what ways you like being creative. I hope I've helped you see that it's not just being good at painting, being good at drawing. It's not just those things that make you a creative person. There are so many things that we do all the time that involve creative thinking. So I'd love to know what ways you like being creative. The creative ways that I'm going to embrace more this year, as I've already said, is gardening. I very much have the intention to do more painting again. And I do love journaling. I do find that it helps me learn things that I'm thinking about my life in general that I didn't even realise. Anyway, the snow stopped. It lasted all of about, 2 minutes. But we'll see over the next 24 to 48 hours. It's probably really insulting, actually, to those of you who I've got a few regular listeners in Canada and, very north of America, which is probably really insulting to you, actually, by saying that we've got a weather warning for snow. Because let's be honest, over here in the UK, we get a bit of snow and the whole bloody country comes to a halt because we don't know how to deal with it because we're not used to it. Certainly where I am, down in the south of the country. So yeah, I do apologise to those of you who probably think, what the hell are you moaning about having a bit of snow? If by some miracle we do get lots of snow, I'll post some pictures on my Instagram stories. Guys, before I go, I would just like to, I haven't had a little plea for a while, asking you to do any reviews or anything. Obviously, I mention it from time to time, but I would love for you to leave me a review. If you listen on Apple, it would be really super helpful if you could leave me a review, please. If you listen every week, then tell me why you listen every week. I would really love to know. And by leaving me a review, it just helps other people find me as well. And as you know, one of my aims this year is to grow my podcast. It is to increase my audience. So it would help me out massively. And I would really, really appreciate it. I'm so grateful to those of you who have done this. But I would love to read more reviews from you guys. If you don't listen on Apple Podcasts or on your iPhone or whatever, and you listen on Spotify, I think you can leave me a star rating, but you can't leave an actual written review. So if you have 5 minutes, just send me a little DM on Instagram if you wouldn't mind. That would be fantastic. Tell me what you love hearing about. Tell me what you love about my podcast. Even if it is just, me whittering on in the background whilst you're cleaning your bathroom, whatever. Like, if I'm there with you cleaning your bathroom, I'm proud of that. Let me know. Last week I told you about the series of reels that I'm doing on Instagram and TikTok. I know TikTok isn't reels, but whatever you call them, videos, I guess, on TikTok. Showing my age now. This week's contribution is books that have helped my mindset. It's helped me learn about myself. It's helped me improve my mindset, and generally helped improve my life. As this episode goes out today, it is my lovely nanny's 89th birthday. Sadly, she's not going to be celebrating today because she is having to go to hospital for a planned procedure. But as we've all said to her, we've got plenty of time to celebrate her birthday. So please do join me in wishing my nanny, who doesn't even listen to this, but I can pass on the good wishes, my nanny a very, very happy 89th birthday. What a ripe old age. Anyway, that is enough from me this week. I will see you next week. And in the meantime, be happy, be positive, and have a great week. Bye.